So, started the recording. Friends, good evening. My name is Kim Ingram, and I am the Director of Ministerial Services and the Conference Secretary of the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. And this webinar tonight has come from a partnership and an initiative that we're working on at the conference that relates to the Leadership Development Team, the Church Vitality Team, the Camp and Retreat Committee, the Board of Higher Education and Campus Ministries, the Foundation, and anybody else that wants to join with us in it. So we're trying to figure out how to resource around fundraising. And we have several different plans for things that we're going to do related to that. But the first one is our grants webinar 101 tonight. And I'd like to open us with a word of prayer. So if you will pray with me. Gracious and generous God, you are the giver of every good and perfect gift, and the source of all wisdom, creativity, and courage. We gather today seeking to be faithful stewards of the resources you have entrusted to us, of the communities you have called us to serve, and of the dreams you have planted within us. Bless this time of learning and preparation. Open our minds to new insights, our hearts to collaboration and compassion, and our spirits to discern how to best use the tools before us for the transformation of the world. Remind us that every grant written, every proposal crafted is more than paperwork. It is an act of hope. It is a prayer in motion and a sign that your church believes in possibility and purpose. So help us to dream boldly, and we offer this work in ourselves in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Yeah. Bear with me a minute as I start the slideshow and then share my screen. And then find the chat. Okay, I did all three. So friends, we are excited to have with us today Sebastian Byers. Sebastian has been working at the annual conference for a good while now as the grants manager of the Western North Carolina Conference Disaster Ministries. And you can see on this slide that he also has been doing grant work and training around that for a long time. He has a background in nonprofit leadership, strategic planning, and resource development. And I think the most remarkable thing is the multi-million-dollar funding portfolio that he has managed. So I'm really only here to do the technology. He's here to give us all the wisdom. We will be watching the chat. We have a Q&A planned for the end. But if you have something that's really pressing, go ahead and put it in the chat so that we can hold on to it for our conversation as we continue. So Sebastian, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to spotlight you alongside of the slideshow. Is the visual good, Sebastian?
It looks great on my end.
Okay, then thank you for being here tonight and providing all of your wisdom with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us this evening. And Kim, thank you very much for the prayer. It really, to me, grounds us in the work that we want to do today. So I am happily with you this evening, and I've got a nice agenda plan for us. I do want to start first of a reason. I'm always very, very big on why am I here? What can I expect to learn? So to me, giving you a reason and agenda helps with both of those. So why we're here is to equip you as leadership to build a capacity and competence in grant writing. Please hold me to that as we go through this hour. I hope when you walk out at the top of the hour, you're going to say, you know what, I feel like I am ready to write. Hopefully I'll have the tools and sort of suggestions to help you along with that. We've already covered our welcoming and prayer. I'm going to then pivot to understanding grants. I'm going to talk to you about strategic narratives. I'm going to talk about workflow for small teams, and I want to put quotes around small teams because all the teams that you're going to be working on these grants are going to be completely different. Some of you might be just you and the pastor. It might be larger groups, but all of this is going to be applicable for everyone. We're going to talk about finding funding. We'll make sure that we leave you with a list of places that you can look and some resources that you can take with you. I do want to mention the realities of grant writing. It is a unique beast to write grants. I imagine some of you have written some and understand. Those of you who are at the beginning of your journey, there's a lot to learn. It's not overwhelming. It is doable, but it is definitely something that you kind of have to work at your skills on being able to write effective grants. Of course, as Kim said, we'll have a Q&A. We'll also have some closing information for you. I do want to start with some norms. I think these are fantastic norms. I want to make sure that we cover them so we all understand why we're here and how to be here today. I really would encourage you to engage. I enjoy engagement. It is not a problem to interrupt me. It is not a problem to offer a comment. It is all for the good of everyone learning. So please be engaged. Drop things in the chat if you're not comfortable with voice. If you are comfortable putting something to voice, please do so. Kim and I are in a total alignment here with respecting time. We like to start on time and end on time, and we'll try and move through the sections with a decent pace, make sure we cover everything, we'll make sure that we use the hour to its fullest. Please share it freely. If you have a story, an example that you think is good for the good of the group, please put it to voice. We'd love to hear it. Learning is through a collaborative space. Collaboration really makes us better writers and better grant deliverers. And we're here to learn together. I am the person, I'm called an expert, but I'm also always learning. Every time I engage with someone about a grant or the grant process, I learn something new, and I'm looking forward to learning this evening. So Kim, if we can go to the next slide, let's talk about what a grant is. A grant is a financial award to support a defined mission or project. There are different types of grants. For those not familiar, they can be operating. So operations allows you to do the things that you want to do in the grant. There are project-specific grants. I happen to work with a specific project, which is disaster ministries. We are repairing homes in Western North Carolina. Anytime where I'm filling out a grant at the top, it says, what is the name of the project? I continually put the same thing to repair homes from the United Methodist Church in Western North Carolina for Hurricane Helene. You can also get grants for capital if you need a new building, if you need to work on a part of your building grounds, that usually falls under capital. And then finally, there's capacity grants, growing your team, finding folks to be able to do the work. I know disaster ministries, we're always looking for case managers and construction coordinators. So that is the capacity that I'm going to be writing into the grants. Please note, and then you're going to see some points of highlight. It's not to be to talk down to you, but just so we're understanding each other, because there are some things that I have noticed both writing and reviewing grants that folks might have some misunderstanding. So I'm trying to find some points of emphasis for you. But a grant, please know, is not a gift. It comes with specific, and I'm going to double click on that word, specific expectations and accountability. With our faith lens, grants are a form of stewardship. Kim, to the next slide for me, please. So grant really needs to be seen from everyone here this evening as a funding strategy. I like to think of it as just a part. It is a complement. It is what you are doing in a formal writing way to try and get funds. And I appreciated folks in the chat who are walking and saying, you know, we put a strategic plan together. Now we need to find some ways to fund what we want to do. So this is just one of those avenues that we can do. It is not a complete replacement. We do not want to depend on grants. They just need to be a percentage of what you're doing. Grants should be part of your sustainable efforts of your funding strategy. And that includes many of the avenues that I've got listed here for you. There is giving, and I know the foundation just recently had a talk and a webinar on looking at giving. Hopefully you've got events going on in your communities that you can use for fundraising. Partnerships, and we're going to talk about partnerships a lot this evening, but having partnerships is a way to find resources and endowments. Again, something I know that the foundation is very strong. I would appreciate you calling and talking to them about endowments. I do want you to think about it like this. I want you to think about this as a portfolio. It is not a paycheck. Now, I promised you some engagement here, and I would love for you to be able to put in the chat for me, or if someone feels like they want to put the voice. How do you build consensus on your funding strategies if you've done so? And how can you decide which grants to pursue? So how about I give folks a couple of minutes to think about that? And Kim, if they come in the chat, if you could share one or two with me, or if someone wants to come to voice, I appreciate them speaking up.
How do you build consensus on your funding strategies? Or how can you use this to decide which grants to pursue? If you want to answer that out loud, just come off mute. I can't see everybody on the screen, or you can put something in the chat. There's no right or wrong, just what comes to your mind.
I will put voice to it. The churches I have traditionally served haven't really had funding strategies, which has been a concern of mine. The finance committees typically have put together a budget based on the giving in the congregations. And I remember reading This Is Not Your Parents' Offering Plate, and and realizing in the churches I've served that we can't fully depend on the giving, the Sunday morning giving at to finance all that we want to do. And I've not, up to this point, been able to push finance committees past that mindset and into part of the responsibilities are to develop this funding plan, right? And think of other creative ways. And so that's the space that I'm sitting in now is to really motivate and encourage those folks along with me in the journey to come up with this portfolio that you call about and to have a funding strategy. So that's something that we're working on right now pretty heavily, and it's been exciting. It's been a growing edge for me, but it's been an exciting one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And it's good to hear the energy, the positivity, the learning, the I'm going to dig in and we're going to dig in and we're going to do this. Building consensus and then developing a plan, funding strategy definitely takes time. But you're recognizing that there is a need for it. And you're here and you all are learning about grants to be a part of that. So bravo to you all. It's not an easy process, but it is an important process. You're going to hear me talk about consensus a lot this evening. It is very, very important to get consensus inside of your own communities, those that are cheering for you in the larger community in which you wish to serve. By the way, who can be a very great source of helping point for strategic direction. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And I am trying to monitor the chat here too, Kim. Rich says that it relates to the vision, mission of the congregation, for example, reaching outside the building might involve live streaming and a website. I really like that. Debbie says our church recognized need in the community schools to be a resource for literacy, so we developed the Liberty Learning Center. The need came first. I love that. That's really listening to community, and then we sought answers to that need. She received grants from Duke and Reynolds, Spelling, and others. Right now, I'm in the process of reporting back. That's great. We'll do one more. Thank you all, by the way, for dropping in the chat and putting the voice. Betsy says we've been doing discernment, and as a tiny congregation, consensus comes together through that process. We're just getting started and need to educate ourselves about grants, etc. We're open to partnerships with the neighborhood nonprofit. I love that. We're going to talk about partnerships. So you guys are all hitting it and give what we can through it. Can't be much at present. So all fantastic. Thank you. And please, as I go on, continue if you have other thoughts. Please talk to each other. This is all really good learning for all of us. So then let's talk about strategic narratives. And this is where I really, really get excited. I'm weird. I like to write. I've always liked to write. And the more that I can work on my processes of telling good stories, to me, the better I feel and the more effective I'm hoping my grants will be. So we're going to do a little bit of a thinking exercise as I kind of come through this. And again, you can drop in the chat for your answers here. So every good, successful grant tells a story. It's the what's the need, how you are responding, and what is the impact of your intervention. Now, we're going to do that with inside of a framework. And that framework is going to start first with exigence. And exigence, if you've never heard that term, is a problem marked by a sense of urgency that demands a communicative action. And that is important when you're thinking about framing your grant. It's not just about telling a story. It's about telling a story with need. And if I could put flashers up, if I could jump up and down to tell you that I need you to communicate by reading what I'm putting there so then we can take action to get this grant. Okay, so let's go through a little quick exercise of exigence. Work with me here. I have an important presentation to do for the conference this evening. I've got a babysitter who's been super dependable, but unfortunately this evening, she's called in and said that she just can't make it. She's not feeling well. So I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to reach out to my mother, and I'm going to say to my mother that I need her to come. Let's suppose she's about an hour or two away. I need you to rush to my house to babysit so I can do this presentation for the conference. What do you think my mother thinks is the form of exigence? Have I conveyed exigence in my message to my mom? What do you all think?
No, you have not.
Oh, thank you. What do you think I could do to frame exigence for my mother?
Give a little more detail of why you need her there instead of you being able to do that on your own.
Absolutely. A why is a very, very good thing. Thank you. What are some other things I could share with my mom?
What are going to be the consequences of you not showing up to the presentation?
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
your mom is emotionally attached to her grandchild. Very, very emotionally attached. So that's urgent in her heart already to me.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So that also is kind of what the audience, what does the audience need? But for sure, I can play on her love for her grandson. Wouldn't you like to see your grandson? Your grandson can't wait to see you this evening. Yes, absolutely. These are all great answers. Can anyone think of anything else?
I think that who you chose to call is important because your mom is going to help you out, right? There's that relationship that's already there, and so thinking of those relationships, I think, is important as well.
Awesome answer. Let's hold on to that word relationships because that's going to show up a lot in my slides about developing and maintaining relationships. These are all fantastic answers, all. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pivot now to audience. And just as we're talking about, who are you asking and what do they value? Now, to me, there is a way to find out who your audience is, and it's very simple. If it's not by word of mouth, if it's not a warm handoff, someone who knows somebody, another thing you can do is simply look them up. You can look up that organization of who you think would be helpful and just read and look at their website. You get a lot from images, text. There are longer reports someone might put out there into your report. That's great. But just look at their website. Look at what their newsletters are. Look at what they are focusing on. Will give you a sense of who they are and what they value. We also need to think about constraints, and those are conditions and limitations to shape the communicative action. So, for example, in the grant world, maybe there's a funder who only has $30 million. That'd be fantastic, but they have to give away this money within 1 year. What am I gonna? Well, their constraint is time. Their constraint is giving money. They also have a constraint on exactly what they have to give money to. And it is super important that we understand what their constraints are. Let me give you an example of this. So I just took a call. I was on a call last week where there was a call for funding in an information session. The person that was sharing was saying we can only do this for recovery operations. That's it. Nothing, no repairs, no stockpiling, no preparedness was a big one. So there was a lot of questions that were coming in about preparedness, but that person was doubling down that they really, really were about recovery. And that's all that this money was for. So that is a constraint. And they had financial constraints and a time that's there. So if the constraints are content specific, they are audience related, and they're time bound. Down here at the bottom, we say, or I'm saying, effective storytelling. It's all about data. I do need you to start to think about data. I know that I shared with Kelly Crimson here the idea of data sharing, and Kelly was very, very interested in that. Data is both actual numbers, but data is also about observations that you're seeing. And I know someone said that the community came to them. That is a piece of data to me, that there is a community need on literacy. You're taking that data, you're weaving in emotion, that exigency, that urgency. Emotion is important, is unfortunately not the only thing that we need to put in there. There's a tendency in grant writing to want to use quotes. We want to bring in the full story. We really want the audience to understand the very serious nature of the problem and who's being affected. And it is fantastic in some areas. Our emotion that we bring in here needs to be connected to the other two. So it needs to be connected to data and purpose. We're going to have limited character space, so we can't fit all the story that we want. We know how heartbreaking it is, you know how powerful it is, but it really has to be in the context of the other things that make effective storytelling. And then we have to also talk about purpose. I do want to give credit for the strategic narrative framework to Katie Graham and Bridget Anderson and Mary Brown. I actually attended their workshop a couple of weeks ago where a lot of this was talked about for grant writers, and it was very, very effective and really stuck with me. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, let's go on to the next slide of building a case for support. Kim, before I do that, I want to make sure, because I'm not looking at the chat directly right now. Am I missing anything in the chat?
You're not.
Great. And folks, if you have any thoughts or comments, would like to discuss something, please interrupt, drop something in the chat. Kim will highlight it for me. If not, I'll be able to hear you and your thoughts. So let's talk a little bit about building a case for support. As we've mentioned, and I'm going to keep double clicking on, you're going to get tired of me saying this by the end of the hour, but please listen to your community for need. Your communities are all different. They all look, sound, feel, they are all geographically different. But there is a community need. We do not want to apply for a grant that does not match that community need. And sometimes we have to go through the hard work as leaders before we apply for that grant to assess what that community need is. If we're lucky and we've heard from the community and we feel very, very solid about that, what we need to do is then take that community need, challenge intervention, and talk about its impact clearly and briefly. It does break my heart when I am a grant writer and I'm a grant reviewer when folks send stuff that's not very clear. I am super big on whatever the question prompt is, tell us this. If your answer does not match that, that's not going to be read favorably by me and other people that are going to be reading. It also needs to be brief. For those that don't know, there's usually a character or a word count in their grants. Sometimes they can be as little as 100 characters, 350 characters. If you're lucky, you'll see 300 words. So we want to write a lot and tell a fantastic story, but we need to condense that down to make those character limits, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So an example is our community faces blank. And I want you to think about as an audience, what is your unique community facing? We respond or want to respond through, what are you going to do? What is going to be your intervention? What is going to be a unique intervention, by the way, that really is you. And you're going to want to communicate that. And as a result, if you were to be funded, the result that we expect or the change that we expect to see. So those who've done like theories of change, this kind of like speaks to that a little bit. And we need to be able to make sure within the 350 characters that we've done that. So while you're sitting here with me, if you've got a pen and paper, and I know I always got one kind of sitting next to my computer, I would love for you to take a moment and fill those 3 blanks in. You could be more than one community need, and that's where it gets a little bit challenging, by the way. There are so many things that you want to do, and whatever it is you want to do, we're going to need to match it up with a funder who's going to support that work and talk about it. If you haven't thought already about what you're going to do, what the interventions are going to look like, that's the next thing that you want to think about. Is it there's that measurable time, how much is it going to cost? So really think about what your intervention is. There's a lot of great things that you want to do, but if you have an empty room in your church, can you turn that into a library? Most likely, yes, if you had some fun. If you wanted to build a complete brand new library on your campus, that might be a little bit of a different thing. What's going to happen? Well, literacy rates are going to go up, hopefully. And then there's a bonus question I have for you just to kind of think about is who in your community can help you build a case for support. Start thinking about all those folks. I'm going to come back to that, but I want you to think about all the people that you know who can help you build this, who can speak to you, who could be someone that you can partner with to talk about that a lot. In the future. I did want to highlight here my little image. This is something that if you walk around with me in the grants world, I'm always going to tell you, and if we get a chance to work together, I'm going to tell you as well. A dartboard is a great analogy for a good grant. It is directly on target, right? Accuracy versus precision. This is precision. It's hitting that bullseye each time. That's something we're going to work. It's going to be a goal. All right, Kim, to the next slide, please.
Yes, Sebastian, I'll just say that when you're talking about listening for your community for need, Debbie reminds us you need to talk to everybody. And then Lynn gave a great example of what their community needs, and that's about letter C and GED. So definitely people are thinking.
Absolutely. And Cindy said food insecurity and displaced families and individuals. So we're of mind of what we need and what our community needs are. I do want to go back to Debbie's comment about talking to everyone. Those of us who've been in social spaces, there is a lot of literature that suggests that we actually don't listen to everyone, not us. But generally, when nonprofits exist and they're writing grants, they're not actually pulling in the entire community. And it's a difficult chore, but it is such an important thing to do to talk to everyone. It can be simple as talking to congregants that are leaving the church for the day. It can be going to your schools. It can be talking to your local EMS. It really, really is a process, but I promise you, the more you talk, the more you realize what your true needs are. Sometimes you might think there is a need, but it's not the actual need, or if there's a need, it needs to be adjusted a little bit. So when you go to write your grant, you're going to have a mind's eye on exactly what my community needs. And there is, by the way, it's not just a grant. That's not the only thing. You'll be talking to grant officers and talking to leadership of the organizations that you're going to apply to, and you're going to have to express and share with them what that need is. You might even have to show them. I know our director of recovery, Maggie Armstrong, had one of our funders come up and see our site. We were opening up a brand new site up in Ashland-Watauga, and that the funder wanted to see that. And so she very much, when she's walking around, needs to be able to speak to what the needs are in that community. Lynn, one more. She said, respond to offering tutoring twice weekly in youth groups in the, if I mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Wogtown community, very poor area. We feed the students one meal a week for the GED to have snacks. And what's going on right now in the current climate, SNAP benefits and people not having food, that's such an important thing to do. So it's about literacy, but it's also, right, we might need to feed folks so their brains have what they need to be able to think clearly. Thank you all for all those comments. So let's talk a little about grant workflows for teams. I just want to bring a reality check to us. The situations vary. I know the first time I spoke to grants to folks in the conference, I learned a little bit about what those teams look like. It might be one or two people who are really driving this. Sometimes it can be a lot larger. There could be larger committees. If you're fortunate enough to have that many folks sitting at the table, that's fantastic. Even for my folks on smaller teams, I understand you're going to be the one doing the work, doing the writing, but I implore you really to reach out and form committees. See as many people as you can get to sit at the table to talk about grants. It's super important for this process. And please know, and I want to affirm for you, that no matter what size your team is, you can succeed with grants, but you must proceed with intention and you must proceed with structure. And I'm going to talk about the intentions and the structure that I think are super important when it comes to writing grants. And for me, the first is when I'm communicating with a team, and I'm going to have to pull folks in. I don't know everything. I'm not doing programs at this time, so I do not know what's going on in the field. So what I need to do for the folks that I need stuff from is I need to make sure that I'm using a shared calendar. Work with me on this. Have you ever talked to somebody and they've got something brilliant spreadsheet, something was in an email, and they say, listen, I got to look. I know I've got it somewhere, right? They got to dig it up. That's not helpful to us to be able to work collaboratively on something. We want to make sure that we put that in somewhere where we can share and we can work on documents at the same time. Excel spreadsheets, documents, things that we're going to send out, narratives. Please use, I'm a big fan of using Google, but Outlook works as well. But whatever it is you're using, put it in the common space where folks can work on it. People have a common calendar. I'm going to talk a little bit about timelines, which I'm super big on. And I use calendars a lot to put things on other people's calendars so they know if we need to talk as a team about something that's going to go on that calendar. I'm a big fan of checklists. To me, it feels really good every day when I write out my checklist. 5, 6, 7, whatever I'm done in the evening. If I've got most of that scratched off, that's been a good day. The checklists to me are not only a daily thing, but they are also a month-to-month thing as well. I would encourage you very much to use checklists and most of all timelines. Grants, the last thing we want to do, and it happens more frequently than I wish, is you'll see a grant and you'll have 2 days to write it. And that is very tough to do, because there's a lot of pieces and a lot of players to pull together to be able to get that done. If and when you do your research, please put out a timeline, a realistic timeline to write it. Right now, Transparently, most things are kind of coming to a close for 2025. You're looking at 2026. So you've got time for January 2026 to lay out a timeline for getting that grant in on time. If it's May, June, whatever, you're going to have a timeline already built now, if you can, about how you're going to address and get that grant in. And to that note, it is super important when you see a deadline. That's the first thing that goes on my calendar. Every day I get a pop-up of when something's closed. Folks that are here in the office with me can see printouts where I've got every grant kind of listed with their deadlines. I put everything in my calendar and I make sure that I'm working with my timelines. It's super important to be successful at grants. I promise you, if you don't and you're scrambling at the last minute, you're going to miss those timelines and you're really going to kick yourself because there's a lot of good stuff. It might be the perfect fit. But if you weren't able to get your grant together, you're going to have to wait until next year. And folks that are giving out money, these nice folks, they're very serious about their deadline. If it says January 14th at 5 p.m., that grant will close, will not be accessible. They will not take an email. It has to be in January 14th, 5 p.m. 2026. Okay. Also schedule some flexible working sessions for folks, especially those of you who are on a bigger team. Do plan for having some working sessions. I would very much encourage you that if you're pulling in teammates, that each meeting is productive, that you're laying out what the agenda is going to be. You make sure that you walk out of that session getting what you need, because what you're doing as a grant writer is taking all that information and synthesizing it into a grant. But you do need that input. You need numbers. You need whatever someone else is bringing, a budget, whatever someone's bringing to the table. You need to have that to continue to make progress along your timeline. Consider asynchronous tasks along that project timeline. I use a program with our team called Instrumental. Inside of Instrumental, which is a grant researching and management tool, I can assign tasks. I actually can load up everything, what I need them to do, when I need them to do it, and the information that they might need. You can do the same thing in a calendar or in an email. Just make sure that you're kind of like working on those tasks when you're not meeting. Don't wait to have everything in when you're just meeting with folks and you can't make progress on your grant. One of the important things for me is to always be working. It is always working at something. It might be weeks, months before I've got something that's going to be due. But if it's on my agenda for the day and I want to work at it, I want to make sure that I'm getting work done. It is somewhat frustrating when you're waiting for information from other people because you can't push the grant through. You might be so close to clicking that send button, but until you get that information from your teammates, you just can't do it. So you having asynchronous tasks for them allows you to continually to work to get your grants in. Another thing of suggestion for the grant workflow is to keep your baseline docs ready. These are the docs that you're always going to use every time, and they're going to include your 501c3 letter if you have it, your W-9 if you have it, a 990, anything that you're going to be frequently putting in and grant funders consistently ask for. And the others are included, your board list. Some of you do not have boards. Whoever is your leadership list will do. And that's something that you can always talk about. So there will be sometimes an attachment you can put, for example, a board list. Then they will offer a short block explanation. And you can say, listen, we don't have a traditional board. This is what our leadership structure looks like. As long as you have something to show them, so we don't want to leave anything blank that's being asked for, but you can add that. And then a budget, which is a big animal. We don't have time to talk about budgets tonight, but budgets, I promise you, are doable. I highly suggest, though, that you think about what your budget is and that you're prepared to present an outward-facing budget, not your internal budget, and a budget that matches up to the amount that you're requesting. So a grant really is two pieces when they're submitted. Not every grant asks for one up front, but most do. You've got your narrative pieces, which we've been talking about with that strategic framework, to the budget itself, which is another component. I personally do budgets, not the big ones. I actually need to bring in Mark King and some other folks to help with those budgets, but that is another bucket. And once we have budget developed, I then can kind of manipulate it and use it for every budget application piece that I need. All right, I will just end this particular part with their writing in layers, especially for my newer grant writers. It is when you see it and you start to see the prompts, you start to want to kind of like just work through it. And I very, very much want to highlight kind of my process of how I do this. So I am looking at the whole application. You are sometimes even offered a preview or a downloadable version that as a PDF that you can kind of work and manipulate into a Word doc. What I will do is I will copy each prompt over, and this is labor intensive, but to me, it's just a process that it's helped me develop my writing skills. I will lay an outline of what it is that I would like to say each one of those prompts. As I'm working along, I'm gaining new information, I'm expanding on that. Then I'll take what I've expanded on from every process and I'll refine each one of them. Again, please keep in mind character limits, and they're never the same. It's 500 words, 500 characters, and you have to look, by the way, and make sure you know. I actually copy when I'm doing this transfer from the PDF to a Word doc. I actually put that number right on my doc, so I know, okay, this is a little bit longer of a section. I can really let go here. Or this is kind of a more tight section. I'm not going to be able to put as much. The refine process, by the way, if I'm over the character limit, this is where that happens. I'm doing that refining. And from me to you, it is heartbreaking, by the way, to do the refine process. I've got really good stuff I've written here. I'm super happy with it. It really is telling an effective story. But unfortunately, I've got 350 characters. When it's that, by the way, those little characters, you'd be amazed how few characters that actually is and how much you have to cut. Lastly, please review, review, review. I know when I was in school, my teachers would always get on me about proofreading, Sebastian, proofread. I never like to do that. Now it's probably my greatest, my superpower. I review the heck out of things. I review it every step. I review what I send because by the time I click in that submit button, which is generally pretty big, sometimes they'll even ask you on a grant application, are you absolutely sure you want to submit this? When you submit, it's gone. And there's no more editing you can do. So what you need to do is do that review process, proofread. Bring somebody in, bring a friend in, bring your sister in, have your sister review and say, hey, how does this look? How does this sit with you? And be open to that review process. When they're really, really big, high stakes grants, I never am the last reviewer. I always bring in Brian Mateer and Maggie Armstrong and other people on our team to review the application, and we'll go back and refine based on some of their feedback. All right, Kim, I have talked for a little bit. Has anyone dropped anything new in the chat?
There's not anything new in the chat.
All right. Again, love to hear from the chat. I am going to get folks to participate at this slide. So we can go ahead and move the next slide. And it is about barriers and some solutions for those barriers. So you are going to play a game with me. I'm not going to reveal. I'm going to ask you to put in the chat. I'm going to go by each picture here on the screen, and I'm going to ask you what you think I was meaning by the picture that I use that might be a barrier, and then I'll talk about its solutions as we go through each. So I'm going to start in my little red block there with my clock. If folks could drop in the chat for me exactly what they think that barrier is.
Deadlines, time.
Yeah, that was an easy one. Deadlines and time. Yeah, there's yeah. Someone just said, Emily said, never enough time before the grant is due. There's never enough time. That's exactly the pressure that we feel about a time frame and our deadlines. That I just don't have time to dig into that grant. My solution to that is work small, work frequently. I've already said that before. Take your time. Try and grab a grant that's going to give you plenty of time so that you can work through it. I told you I already put things on my calendar, so I know what the deadlines are. You can even set yourself reminders. Hey, this week, spend 1 hour working on that particular grant, 1 day working on a grant. It's tough to find an entire day to work on a grant, but if you can. All right. Thank you all for participating. Now, I'm going to go to the far right corner, and I've got this ancient machine that my 10-year-old son wouldn't know what that is. So what do you think I meant by that picture? That black thing with the white keys, antiquated, wordsmithing, rewrite, pulling the grant together. Proofread. Oh, we got a winner. Writer's block. Debbie, yes, writer's block. It is when I work with folks who are just starting out in grants, they really say, I don't know where to begin. I just don't know what to write. And that is a legitimate concern. And I feel that. My recommendation there is really just to write everything, anything that comes to mind. You see that prompt, to start writing. Don't hold back. It is our tendency to want to be perfect right away. Try and put that off to the side and say to yourself, you know what? I'm just going to jot down some notes. I'm going to walk away from it for a moment. Then I'm going to come back and reread it. No, I can put another sentence in there. Yes, it is very antiquated technology. Reminds me of Stephen King very much, just appropriate, I think, for the season that we're here. But yes, that is one solution to that writer's block is to really just try and write things down. All right, so I'm going to go in the bottom left corner. Those are track starting blocks. I'm kind of giving away my question here. But what do you think is that picture representing as a possible barrier to writing grants? Yeah, you guys got that one. Yep. Getting started is where do I begin? That's exactly right. Not knowing where to start. Yep. So start at the beginning. There's actually on grants, there's some easier stuff to do. It's the demographic information. You're entering who you are. If you've got an EIN number, yeah, competition's good. Hold on to that one too. Not here. The EIN number, titles, those things are kind of easy, but they are momentum generating for me. I opened up the application. Whew, this is going to be a daunting one, but I can do that first demographic information. I can put the bishop's name and who's the leader of the organization. I can get some of those things in. And then, you know what? I'm encouraged. I got through that demographic. I got to start. Yeah, let me go ahead and take on that first prompt. And it's amazing. Like I write the first outline of the prompt. I'm feeling good. And then I'm on a roll. Yes, absolutely. All right. So my bottom right corner, folks, how about that one? All that stuff, that glorious electronic stuff, clutter, not organized, Carla says, clutter. hmm Yeah, gathering information. Oh, I like that. Getting on too much junk, chaos, my brain clutter. Thank you, Cindy. That's actually to me, I'm going to say yes, disorganized, Lynn. That's it. And it is like, oh, there's so many pieces. How do I put this all together? Outline, outline, put down a plan. Don't even start to write. Give yourself a plan, that outline. I'm going to start here with this. This is the problem in the community that I have. I just might write down literacy and I might just start working. Okay. And then in the middle, folks, one last picture on my little game here. This nice handshake. And we already kind of used this word before this evening. What do you think my middle picture is? Partnerships, relationships, teamwork, partnerships, too much relationship, agreement. Lynn is on tonight. Yes, coming to an agreement is sometimes a bit of a challenge. What are we going to apply for? Do we agree that this is a need? Sometimes it takes time. I'm going to encourage you to be in agreement. Whenever I take a look for a grant and I might suggest something, I do reach out to get agreement on our team. I do not want to be the person applying for this that nobody knows. Even if I think it's a great idea, even if I think it's a perfect fit for us, I want to make sure that I've got agreement, buy-in, and we're working together. So I appreciate you all. All right, let's go to the next slide. And I do want to make sure that and we are getting more than halfway there, by the way, in our webinar. So I appreciate you sticking with me. I do want to share some place to find grants. Please know this is not an exhaustive list. I could make 7 more slides, probably still not be done. But I did want to divide them up for as a faith-based focus, local as well as national. Some of you, if you do know, this would be a great spot to drop in the chat. If there's one that Sebastian missed, that's great. Please drop them in. But I do want to highlight a couple of these, which is the United Way. That's a big one for me. I actually subscribe to a lot of it. There's a lot of United Ways out there. I subscribe to them all from Mecklenburg County, where I'm at, all the way out to Buncombe County. If the United Way's got a website and they can send me a newsletter, that's where I'm going to look because in their newsletter, they generally have a page that's going to say grant opportunities. Also, the United Ways, if you don't know, is usually a big player in everyone's community. So they are plugged into all the opportunities that are out there. So I definitely want to look. The NC Community Foundation, I know a lot of you are familiar with the next one, the Duke Endowment and Z. Smith Reynolds. Those are fantastic ones. They do a lot of work for the church, which I absolutely appreciate and love. Community foundations are another place. For our work in disaster ministries, we work with the Community Foundation in Western North Carolina. We have a great relationship with Golden Leaf. Casey Ginsburg is the leader of that organization, and she just loves working with us. She'll have a warm reception if she sees applications coming in from you. KP Reynolds, Sisters of Mercy, Presbyterian Church. Thanks. That's a big one here, at least for us in Charlotte. Well, it's actually throughout North Carolina, right? Because there's banks all over. But banks are a wonderful source. I will be transparent. Their open processes vary. When the bank is feeling good, I generally tend to see a lot of more grants. There's always some grants, but they can be very specific. I think when times are a little bit more relaxed, we'll see Bank of America, Truist, and all of these folks really, really opening up their doors again for grants. But they're in your community might be perfect. I know I was working on a PNC application, and they were looking very, very specifically for folks that were doing community revitalization in these very particular communities. So if you were in at that time with that community, that'd be a wonderful grant to apply for. And then resource communities, and that's good for rural communities. We do have grant web pages, and I've got a picture here of our conference web page. The foundation also has their own grants web page. I was just there yesterday, a fantastic resource as well. Nationally, I know some of you have had touch base with the Lilly Endowment. That's another strong supporter. The Mustard Seed. Again, I've got a little scarf here for you just to remind you to sign up for newsletters. It takes about 5 minutes to do, and they come in your inbox, and you can read them on, the daily or on the weekly. And just that might be a spot where you might be able to find some grants. I know I get asked that a lot. Do read past awards, by the way, because those awardees will tell you a little bit about who the community that they're looking to serve. But sometimes it's a little cheat code here. If you go and look at who received it, you can actually look on their page because they might also share other places that they've received grants from, and then you can go ahead and apply to those as well. So it's like they're giving you, by their celebration, giving you some grants. And looking at impact reports. Again, all of this can be found on funders' websites. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Something that I and some other grant writers around me would want you to know, and I want you to hear, is collaboration multiplies impact. Folks that are giving you grants love, love, love when you collaborate with folks in your community. Joint applications are awesome. They really like that because they have a finite amount of money, and they want that money to stretch and go as far as it can. Giving the money to your organization is great. If they can give that to you or to your partner organizations, then they're multiplying their impact. Look for like-minded ministries. I know there's fantastic work being done throughout the conference. A lot of ministries doing incredible things. Reach out to those folks that I know Kim said you were all together earlier today. Talk in those spaces about the grants that you're thinking that you're going to apply for. I know we think competitive mindset when it comes to grants, but in this case, a collaborative grant's actually a better thing than you having that competitive mindset. Also talk to other nonprofits in your area. There are folks doing incredible work. I know that I've heard a list of folks in the Buncombe area that we were looking at that are out there doing work, and United Way was happy to share 20 organizations, and I'm happy to write them an email to let them know, hey, I saw this grant. I see the work that you're doing. We're kind of doing that work. We're doing that work. You want to go in on this together. Some folks won't answer you, will tell you no, but the ones that will tell you yes, those are solid partners. And they might not just be a solid partner for this particular grant, but they might be a solid partner going forward. You'd be amazed at the doors that will open. And then please look for community members as well. There are folks in your community that have incredible resources. Know folks. It's Smith Reynolds. If you don't ask, you just don't know. They're a fantastic source of people to think about applying with. Again, funders love to see partners. They like to see shared leadership. In some of your communities, folks sit on several boards that can offer their expertise, but that also conveys a sense of trust. If they know that person's on the board of the bank and they're associated with you and providing leadership to you, that's a feather in your cap. That's a good thing to do. I would love you to drop in the chat, though. I'm going to continue for the sake of time just to keep kind of going, and I'm coming down. I don't want to use up a lot of Q&A time. But if you have applied for a collaborative grant, please let us know. I'm very, very interested who you're partnering with or how it went. So please drop in the chat for us. All right, I'm going to use just a couple more minutes. Kim, we go on to the reality of grant writing. I do want to kind of leave you with a couple of things to think about, not to give you more clouds in your day, but just to let you know if you're thinking about grants, it's a good spot to learn. Please note that passion does not guarantee funding. You know how hurting the community is, and you want to tell that story passionately. But so did the 250 other organizations that are applying for the exact same money. So if you go back to what I said, a really good storytelling, focused and not just passive. Please know that grants are competitive and rejection is common. Just beneath this, I tell you what the success rate is for grants. It's not very high. It's 10 to 30%. Please note that a no is feedback, not failure. That's a mindset. And I truly, truly, truly believe in that. What I do is when I see a no, that's not the last communication that you're going to hear from me. I will follow up with an email. Thank you very much for letting us know. How could we improve? And is it possible to reapply? If not this cycle, if we're not fit here for your mission or what you're looking for, do you have any suggestions for us? And some folks will not answer you. Some folks will, and it's invaluable information that they're sharing. If you have received a grant before, and you're going to hear me talking about this continual process of communication, please consider renewing. You have a much, much greater chance, 60 to 80% if you're a reapplicant. Some of you might know some of the grants that have been applied for before. If there has been with your organization, do ask around folks that have been around for a while. Hey, have we applied for this E. Smith Reynolds? If you have and you received, great, then we're going to apply again. You might apply for a different need, but that funder already has a relationship with you. Going to managing the yes and no on the next slide. Again, just double clicking on this. If no, thank you, learn and adjust. I had a question for everyone, how you adjust. To me, I'll go ahead and answer that. One of the things you can adjust is you as the writer can adjust what your language is. Reread everything and reread it with a critical eye. Did I not communicate? Something that tends to come up on the reasons for rejection is your narrative did not match up with the funder's priorities. It's not your bad writing. It's not your organization. It's just that funder's priorities, which you might know because you've gone and looked at the website, or they had a board meeting last week and that funder's priorities have completely changed. We had a partner that we were working with. They were happily working with us. I wrote, hey, you worked with us last year. Would you like to work with us again? I got a note back pretty quickly. No, Sebastian, the company has changed their priorities for this year and you're just not a fit. It's not me, that's them. Okay. If yes, if you do get a yes, yay, good, ring that bell. I'm real big on celebrating these wins. If yes, send a card, pick, give them informal updates, not just when they're asking, not just when it's a report. Consistent communication goes a long way for funders to want to support you or to continue to support you. You're building long-term trust. I give an example. It's actually just a flyer of ours, but we're going to be doing some cards here. We're going to retreat as a team. We're going to do some cards, and cards are going to be thank you cards for folks who are not even going to ask for it. I think it's really important. Okay, we are in the wrap-up phase. I'm going to make sure I leave at least 5 minutes, so I'm going to do this in 1 minute. Forgive me for speaking so quickly, but you've heard all this before. Please know a grant is a tool, not a goal. Please listen to your community and adapt to their needs, double-clicking, highlighting that word. Avoid applying without communicating your intent to apply. I have heard some folks are working in silos. They're just firing off applications. Don't do that. Talk to people, communicate with them, because the more folks you get involved, the better your output, the better your grant's going to be. Tell a clear, concise call for support grounded in your mission in particular, or if you're collaborating, what you would all like to do together. Start small for my new grant writers, folks who are trying to grant writers, or thinking about grant writing, grow your experience from there. Don't start with a couple $1 million federal grant. That'll be a long time for it, very frustrating. You want to give up grants. Start small. Go for the little wins first. Keep relationships active and the gratitude ongoing throughout the grant cycle, pre, during, and most of all, post. After the money's all gone, Let folks know what you're doing. This is what your impact is. Just want to let you know. Pull in members of your congregation with the grant budget editing experience. You'd be amazed at the folks who are former finance officers, folks who have written grants before, and those that have been newspaper editors. They can all help you. Pay attention to the grant parameters. I've talked about character limits and other things like that, what they're seeing. And spend the money. If you're successful and you get the money, you got to spend it within a particular time. It's not a rainy day fund for you. Here on resources and next steps, real quick, some things you're going to get a handout. Kim, if it didn't already come to you, there is training from the conference that we're doing tonight, and hopefully we'll do in the future. There's also the foundation trainings. I know someone was in the foundation training. There is outside of the conference, it's North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, the University of Charlotte, if you're in the Charlotte area, continuing education. And then I'm going to leave you here with next steps. I would like you to research. I'm providing some research tools for you. Again, this will be recorded. I know I'm going fast, but there's Instrumental, which I mentioned. There's Grant Station, the United Way Community Foundation pages, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. I love them. They always have opportunities there. Please develop a plan, work diligently, and submit often. Get those grants out there because you're going to hear more no's. You're going to want to put out more grants than you think. And then talk to your community about your grants. It could be at your local bank, anyone in your community that you can do. So I am done. We only have a few minutes for the Q&A. I apologize. I'd love to hear what questions you have. My question for you, and it's just a reflective question for you to walk out, is your next step you'll take after today. What's the first thing that you're going to do? I've got a QR code here for you to scan. It is a very short survey. We very much appreciate you filling it out. And as we got a few minutes for Q&A, we might not be able to get our prayer in, but I do hope I imparted some wisdom to you. I hope I emphasized some collaboration, excuse me, and that you're looking forward to being good stewards of grant funds. So thank you for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Kim and to you to ask any questions you might have for me.
So the first question we have is, what is the research management tool that you use?
Sure, it's Instrumental, and it is a subscription service. It is free for 1 week. It is a license that you do have to buy, but I like it because it helps me work smarter, not harder. You can really narrow down some parameters of the things that you're looking for with it. So if you get a chance, and by the way, Instrumental has no A at the end. It drives me crazy every time I type it in. It just ends in EL. Of course, Brenda, happy to share.
We have a couple minutes. Do you have any other questions? I have one then. So I did an AI workshop thing all day yesterday. What is the role of AI in grant writing?
No, I was hoping someone would ask that question. So AI lies and it doesn't know you very well and it doesn't tell the story authentically like you do. To me, it is a good first editor. So I tend to write and I will ask AI, am I clear on this? And AI will give some suggestions. And what I like to do then is get out my red pen and be like, no, what you said is not right. But in that process of me arguing with, and I do talk to it, by the way, I might be a little crazy with that. It allows me then to I'm generating ideas, bouncing it off of its ideas. And then that becomes that revision step. And then that's it for me. Once I lock down, I'm doing the edit and final edits. I will use something like a Grammarly to check my spelling and grammar. But after that, that's as far as AI can play in this game because it truly doesn't know us, and especially the work that we're doing, it just doesn't know us authentically. So it's a tool, and I'm glad that it's here. It does help with some things, little things that would take time. For the most part, I really believe in the passion and the power that we have to be able to write.
I will say one thing somebody said yesterday, it wasn't about grant writing, but the comment was that when they had too many words or too few words, but in this case it was too many, they used it to help them make it fewer words. So that could be, if you've already done all the words, it might be something, I don't know, you might disagree with this, but something just to help make it more concise if you have too many words.
Sure, but to be honest, it cuts the intent out. It cuts that one phrase that I wanted in there. It's it's analytic. It's not. It doesn't care. And to me, I'm passionate. It's hard though, again, to make that last cut to get within. But I want that final say with what I write.
So friends, I appreciate the comments that you've made in the chat. Sebastian, if they do that QR code, that's the same as the link I'm going to send, right?
Yes, you have a shortened URL that I gave you. It is.
Yes. So I will send that to you in the next 15 minutes. I wanted to be sure I captured everybody that registered. So what we really are interested in is what else you want to know. What questions do you have? What direction do you, or what further direction do you need? So we're talking about Grants 102, but we want to do it according to the needs of the people who are participating and interested in that. So if you'll help give us that feedback, many of you know how to get a hold of me at the office. So if you have any further thoughts or other things that that you're interested in learning more about, we are open figuring out what this initiative looks like and what different directions we're going to go with it. And I do have a quick prayer, so let us close in prayer together. Loving and generous God, thank you for the wisdom shared and the connections we made today. As we leave this space together, remind us that every resource and relationship can be used for your glory and for the good of others. Guide our next steps with clarity and courage, so the work we do would reflect your grace and bring hope to the world. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Redeemer and friend. Amen.
Thank you all.